Hello again, Social Work 6700. So I just stopped the video before I got into some of the strategies that you might use to be able to visualize conversations in order to be able to synthesize them a little more easily. Just because I want to put that video at the top of the discussion board uh, assignment so that you can refer back to those. I will also have a link to these slides on the introduction page in Blackboard, as well as at the top of that discussion board post assignment. And they have some links to some additional materials that might help you attack one of these techniques. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen again. One thing that I really want to emphasize as we start looking at these slides is I'm not showing you any of these in order to make you feel like you have to do exactly one of these methods that I'm describing. I am showing some examples of different ways that scholars organize information, or librarians around the country recommend that people organize information. And I'm hoping that, with your prior knowledge and experience doing research like this, that you might be able to bring some of the knowledge that you have about how you work and what works well for you to one of these techniques. And you might be able to find something that will work well for you going forward. It's entirely possible that you will try out one of these techniques in the discussion board post activity and say, that was terrible and I'm never doing it again. And that's totally okay. You tried it and now you know. And I imagine a lot of you have techniques that work well for you. And one thing that I would like to accomplish through the discussion board activity is to have all of you have a discussion about what does work for you. And I think you'll be able to learn a lot from each other, because there's a lot of expertise in the room, so to speak, in the virtual classroom. So there's not one answer of how to do this, but what I want to have you try today is a method of visualizing the ideas and the articles that you find in order to identify relationships between them. So I'm going to show you a few examples. Again, these slides are linked in Blackboard. And you can get to some of the links in these three main methods that I'm going to go over. So the first one that I want to talk about is mapping. And I used a tool called MindMeister, and that's linked right down here at the bottom. And you are welcome to use that. It's a free tool online. There are a bunch of mind mapping tools that are available for free online. You just do a Google search for mind map, you'll see a few of them. And I would be happy to put together more if there's interest in that. Just let me know in the discussion board. But you can see what I've done here is a lot of these bubbles are articles. So these are just the titles of scholarly articles. And the arrows kind of point in the direction of what cites what. So this article points to this article. And so this one is something that this one cites. This one cites this one. And then I have a couple bubbles here that highlight the relationships between articles. And I didn't do a ton of work there. I just wrote annotation that explains a commonality or difference between these two. And so just thinking in terms of how you might be able to use this is you might be able to put different articles together in groups, and one article might appear in more than one place to identify a different concept. But again, we're just thinking about ways that you can look at the connections between articles and where the ideas connect or where they're building off of each other in order to achieve that synthesis in your writing. And I really just used MindMeister because it would be legible. I can't remember if I said that or not already, but you could easily just draw this, or if you wanted to get really creative with it, you could cut out little bubbles and write on those so that you can move them around and think about how to visualize it. And if you want to do some kind of mapping that you draw by hand for the discussion board post, just take a picture of the map that you do and put that in the discussion board post, and people might be able to learn a lot from how you thought to organize the information in the articles that you found. Another way that you can organize the information in the articles that you find is a matrix. And so this is basically, you can do this in a spreadsheet program. So Google Sheets in Google Drive, Microsoft Excel is probably the most common example. And I think there are a bunch of free open source examples of programs like that out there. You all have seen spreadsheets. But what I want to highlight here is thinking about how you can kind of put things together, put articles right next to each other, and look in kind of a very linear way of how different articles address different topics. So here, the column on the left looks at themes or ideas to be addressed in the literature review, and then I guess the rows talk about the different topics or issues you want to address, and the columns are different articles. So the names in that top row there are the names of that's the name of the first author of a bunch of different articles. So there's one row of information that talks about alteration of women's roles because of World War II, another row that talks about hardships and oppositions that women faced. There's also a link down here for more information on making a literature review matrix. There's some really good information in this guide about how to think about how you might want to organize information. And the last thing is just the old trusty outline. And working at the reference desk, I talked to a lot of students who are working on what their instructor calls an annotated outline. And that, in my mind, that just kind of means like a really beefed up outline. So here's just an example excerpt of this outline. So A, under the statement of the problem, sort of talks about one piece of the problem and an article and it shows a citation for an article that represents that one piece. And then B talks about another piece of the problem with two articles to back that up. So just thinking about the different important parts of the literature you're finding and trying to put those different articles that help convey that information together, I think could be a really helpful way to synthesize a lot of those different pieces. And so again, there's a link to an example of an annotated outline here that might help you as you put together an outline that helps you synthesize. So that will be the end of this video. Again, in the discussion board post, the goal is to choose 3 or 4 articles and put them together using one of these methods, either the outline, the literature review matrix, or the mind map, and try and think about what would be some ways that might be helpful to you in the actual process of doing your literature review in order to help you better synthesize that information and make the connections between different articles to sort of illustrate a conversation. So I'm going to turn this off now, and the third video will be about cited reference searching. So I will